How would you feel if people arrested for domestic violence had to register like time offenders do? I think this is one of those things that sounds great when you only have a vague concept of it, but is actually a pretty terrible idea when you have a better idea of what specifically it'd mean. I have an acquaintance that's a registered pedophile. That's what comes up every time a prospective employer does a background check when they go to the hospital, and after a point the nurses are suddenly way more rude, wonder what they found out every time they move, and have to basically block out blocks and blocks around any school or public service. Their infant was almost removed from their custody at birth. And this is in Canada. When we were 16 they sent a TT pic to their also 16-year boyfriend, charged with production, holding, and distribution of child pornography, and now they're a registered pedophile. It's ruined their life, but they even admit it's easier on them being female. People are more confused and willing to hear them out. They've said had they been born male and this happened they probably would have killed themselves. Edit, they're working to get their record cleared, or it may have been before their child was born, but we are not super close and I know it's a really tender subject, so I try not to pry. It sounds ridiculous to say you feel sorry for a pedophile, but I think it just goes to show how buzzwords are used to manipulate public opinion. It's so weird how people's faith in a police officer's competence changes depending on what kind of crimes are being talked about. No confidence in police in most circumstances, but time offenders and domestic violence? Oh yeah, police never make a bad call in those scenarios. Cut and dry on to the next. If you think I'm just being contrarian, I'm highlighting my own experiences. I was arrested for domestic assault and battery because the ducking cop didn't know how to do his job. I eventually got it expunged because I never hit anyone. But you all should probably start talking about police reform a little more often than new and inventive ways to duck over people even more. Arrested doesn't mean seen victed. Surely you meant seen victed, right? It's not fixing the root cause. The root causes are well established, others why people stay. People stay out of fear, dependence on the abuser, inability to recognize abuse, disability, lack of resources, low self-esteem. Basically you could end domestic abuse entirely if you empowered abusees financially and with mental health care. But mental health care is bananas expensive, and having to work 60 hours per week, if you don't already, to try and get back on your feet, or being homeless, is a huge disincentive. We live in a society that puts those people in the situation where they cannot seek help or get out because they lack the resources to do so, and until you fix that, everything else is a band-aid. I totally disagree with it. As a defense attorney, I've seen a lot of the registration system. It is already so flawed. There are so many people on it that absolutely should not have to register. Fun fact, you do not have to be seen victim of a registrable offense to be required to register, at least in my state, which is a fairly liberal state. If you are charged with a crime that requires registration and are found guilty of anything coming from that set of circumstances, you register, even if found not guilty by a jury for that offense. And it is much easier than you would think to be charged with a registrable offense than you would think. The predatory offender lists are very watered down with non-predators. Once you register, it's incredibly difficult to turn your life around. No one will hire you, you can't go to college, and registration is complex, especially for poor, uneducated people. That violation incredibly likely, even if you're not actively avoiding registration. I'm immediately suspicious of any initiative that has no other purpose besides publicizing bad things someone has done, or even just allegedly done to make them a pariah. Because God knows, if there's anything we needed more of, it's witch hunts. The law exists to curb mankind's shittier nature, not indulge it. The time offender registry has been a civil rights disaster. It's time for it to go, not to expand it. So I'd be totally opposed. Anytime you think you've got a group of people that is so bad you can do whatever you want to them, take a step back. We actually have this in the UK. I can't remember what it's called, Lawless law or something similar. Women can call the police and quote the law and the police will answer whether the person in question has anything in their record relating to domestic violence with a yes or no and no further information. It was brought in after the death of a woman through domestic violence to a man. who was known to be a serial abuser, but his background was protected, so she could not be warned. Edit Claire's law. Edit 2. I should clarify that Claire's law can be invoked by men who are concerned about their welfare in this regard as well, rather than just women. What's with everyone's obsession with making lists and putting people on them? My opinion is no, not with the current system. Not even sure what this list is supposed to tell me. This man woman hits people. Every day I commute on Houston freeways. I feel like everyone is already on this list. I'm not sure why one would need this. How is this list supposed to help the victims? You can look up convictions on people you are about to date. I was arrested at 17 with domestic battery and charged as an adult. The small town infam is very tight-knit, and most major problems are swept under the rug. One night, my mother snapped and started beating the ever-living acid out of me. I screamed multiple times back, "Stop hitting me," but no one was around to hear, but my stepfather. So, in defense of myself, I pushed her off of me and onto a couch. My stepfather then called his friend on the force who came and arrested me without questioning. Should I be put on a registry? I'm for the abolition of the sauna and this as well. Those lists don't prevent crime. A rehabilitative approach to crime does. This has been shown in statistics from the criminal justice system and the Pew Foundation. Google recidivism rates for specific crimes. Ex-felons are a large legally discriminated against group of people in the country. All these lists do is contribute to reoffense and further stigmatize people with undiagnosed mental health issues, poverty issues, and addiction issues. There's also a lot of research that suggest that a rehabilitative approach is cheaper for taxpayers and would improve the productivity base of the economy, but that doesn't put federal money in contractors that build prisons, companies that exploit incarcerated people and their families, or law enforcement agencies. As a European, I feel that we left pillar is behind us in the Middle Ages and they can stay there. Like it's a reset idea. The S-time offender list is also a ducking stupid idea that's broken as hell. Half the people on it were minors ducking other minors who had PSS'd off parents and similar stupid shit that nobody should rightly care about, but the people involved. Shitty idea. If you served your time, you should at least have an opportunity to turn your life around. Our country is obsessed with punishing people. It's gross. Too many people here would rather get a cheap revenge beaner over stupid shit like this than work on things that would improve the quality of life here and reduce crime violence across the board. In some states and municipalities you can get a domestic violence charge for breaking your own property while in an argument. Against. You've done your time. Why should you be on a list that is going to further stymie your life? If you are so dangerous that you need to be on a list and prevented from owning a firearm, not being allowed to live near a park or a school, not being allowed to have certain jobs, then why are you not still in prison? You do your crime, you get out of prison, and that should be the end of it. No lists, no felony status, none of it. If there is a real fear that you are going to reoffend, then you shouldn't be released from prison. What your past crime was should only matter when it comes to sentencing you if you have reoffended. My sister was beaten badly by her husband after he did some hard drugs and was already drunk. He served his time, but he's a felon. So he's not going to get much better than a job washing dishes. He's also a high school dropout, and my sister allowed him to not work for the bulk of their marriage at minimum wage. How the hell is he supposed to stand on his own 2 feet when he's got that felony status? He has to pay his PO every time he see him and is required to meet with him once a month, pay for his own drug testing, pay for his own alcohol testing, pay restitution for his crime, pay child support for 2 children, though one is now 19. So I guess it's 1 child now, and then pay for things like rent, food, utilities, and such. Creating a domestic violence registry doesn't do any good in this case, but to further keep him down. So where does someone like my sister's husband go? In our current system, his only option is going to reoffend and go back to prison. Prison sucks, but at least there he will have a job to do. He will have a roof over his head, 3 meals. The system is designed to get people like him to fail. I don't like my sister's husband, never did, and I don't like having to advocate for that son of a BTCH. But we need to allow people to rise above their mistakes and live a positive life. This system of people being felons for life, of registries that only hurt offenders, doesn't have any positive benefits for society. Just continue to punish those who have served their time.